Depressed about politics? Me? Nothing to be depressed about at the moment. I think, look, clearly we have a very divided country. It's polarised on an issue which will dominate British politics for a very long time. And I think the unique problem, I mean, of all people, my good pal Jacob Rees-Mogg alludes to this, the unique problem Labour has is it has in its electoral coalition the likes of people who live in London, in Manchester, in Birmingham, Liverpool, who feel very traumatised in the aftermath of the EU referendum. They think it's all a bad dream and they want it to go away. You've got other Labour voters, for example, in Doncaster, Oldham, Burnley, who feel they've got their country back. And it's very difficult to reconcile those two very different perspectives. And often, because Brexit is a fisher line, it's not just about the EU. In fact, if anything, the EU's kind of long down the list, in terms of what the EU referendum conjured up on everything like immigration and multiculturalism, on other kind of social issues, I suppose, where you get two groups of people with quite different outlooks on life and different priorities. And, it is difficult when you want a Labour opposition to have a clear kind of take on the people at the top, the vested interests, talk about tax justice, investment rather than cuts. But Owen, instead talking about... Sorry, go for it.
Does it not make you perhaps worry that the coalition that is the Labour Party, that particular one, is just outlived, is past its sell-by date now? It doesn't work because the two groups in it just simply don't agree with each other on all the sort of relevant and big issues of the day.
No, it just needs to adapt. I mean, look, this isn't a British problem. All over Europe, as you know, social democracy is in crisis. And, and it doesn't matter if the leaders of these parties are on the left or the right. In Germany, for example, the Labour sister party, the German Social Democrats, their leader supports third-way Blairite-style politics. He's on 20% in the opinion polls. I mean, he'd probably be envious of Labour's terrible polling in this country. There are very few countries where it's doing well. So clearly the left has to adapt. And often you get now, across Europe, the old kind of so-called centre-left and a rising radical left who are arguing with each other and very angry with each other. But that's often displaced fury from both wings at their own lack of a clear route to power, a clear vision and a clear strategy. And all sections, if you believe in a different sort of Britain or a different sort of Europe, all those other countries, there is a big kind of ask now about how you build a broad coalition, and that coalition has changed a huge amount. It's not the old industrial working class anymore, a service sector working class, hire and fire, more people going to university. It's tough, but it can be done. Of course it can.
Let me put that to the others. I mean, Sonia, are you selling your shares in Labour at the moment?
I would do, but I think really what we have is a complete vacuum of leadership. I think they have got to decide whether they're on one side of the fissure or the other. They've got to be brave. They've got to then decide which one they're going to do and then stick to it and fight for it and vote accordingly in Parliament. I mean, the Supreme Court today said, right, it's up to you now, politicians, to take this forward. It very much is so. It is now up to Parliament to make a decision. MPs are not delegates, they're representatives. They're not legally bound to vote this way or the other. They should vote with their conscience. And I do think the leadership of the party should allow them to do so.
Tom, have you got any advice for Labour? Not your sort of usual thing, I know, but...
Very happy to offer advice to anyone who asks, even you, Evan. I think Sonia's absolutely right. They will be in a terrible mess for as long as they try, as Owen pointed out, to straddle this giant fissure. It is literally unstraddleable.
But if they give up one side of it, they're going to lose half their market, aren't they? And that's quite tricky. That's a brave choice.
And funny thing, we've seen this before. The Scottish referendum, as Nick Watt pointed out in his package very well, by really almost no fault of their own, they've been split in two by two giant referendums in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think what Labour really do need to try and realise is the existential threat that's going on here. This is not just a problem that may resolve itself in a few weeks or months' time with a few cheeky little votes in Parliament. There's a poll out tonight for the Stoke by-election done by Labour Leave, the John Mills-sponsored Labour outfit wanted to get out of the EU. On the first ever one on the Stoke by-election, and it has Paul Nuttall, the leader of UKIP, 10 points ahead already. As we know, the election is going to be in about a week's time.
If you want a list of the other candidates in that by-election or the so far selected candidates, you can go to the BBC website for that.
Very BBC.
A 10-point lead for Paul Nuttall.
10-point lead, and so he's on something like 35%, Labour on 25%, and 80% of his support have come from Labour voters.
Do we believe this contention that Remain Brexit is the fissure that divides the nation at the moment, more than left, right, or other things? Because I know that it feels like in the circles I mix in that it is. But I mix in quite sort of politically engaged circles. I wonder whether out there are lots of people who really don't much
Well, I think
care about
there was
it.
another poll today, wasn't there, saying that more people were concerned with what was happening in the NHS than they were with Brexit. But I think all these issues get conflated, don't they? And I think, again, you just go back to leadership. And I think you need a leader of the Labour Party, or whichever party perhaps will now replace it, to take a position, to stick at it, and then say this would be better for the NHS, this would be better for employment, or whatever it is. We don't have that at the moment. We have no opposition.
Before I go back to Owen, where have all the Tory Remainers gone? I mean, when you had Brexiteers in the Tory party, they were very noisy. The Remainers, why are they acquiescing so much in the Tory party?
I wouldn't call it acquiescing. I think they're biding their time. Their numbers are still strong. There aren't just one or two of them brave enough to stick their heads above the parapet and give David Davis a hard time like they did in the Commons today. I'd say there's 40, 50, possibly 60, 70 of them. Remember the likes of George Osborne. A lot of people remain silent because they know now is the wrong time to start waving their flag. Theresa May has the country behind her, the momentum behind her. This is going to get a lot more difficult for her. We've only just
You think it's going to get
this.
more difficult to you? Because at the moment it feels like she's making all the running, she's got the clearest view, she's...
So this is just the early skirmishes of what is going to be a giant warfare.
And do you agree with that, Sonia?
Well, I think what Theresa May has done is made sort of the whole Brexit thing like a cult. And if you don't belong to it and don't subscribe to it, you're shunned. You don't get on telly, you don't get asked to parties, you're sort of excluded socially and politically and all the rest of it. And I think that actually a lot of people are afraid to stick their heads up above the parapet.
Owen, are you optimistic for a post-Brexit Britain? Because there are those who say we're basically going to leave, it's going to be all right. Or are you rather down on it at the moment?
Well, of course, at the moment, the odds are that in terms of a deal that prioritises jobs, living standards and the economy, not looking great. And this threat of turning Britain into a kind of giant tax haven, which would mean gutting public services, I think is something that should chill everyone. And I think this is the point. If British politics now is simply going to be about our relationship to the European Union, rather than say, I don't know, that we've gone through the longest fall in living standards since the 19th century, that squeeze is going to come back, by all predictions. The housing crisis, the lack of good, decent, secure jobs, which is why many communities voted to leave the European Union, because they felt that they didn't, their communities they'd lost control of. We could go on, education, the National Health Service, as Sonia points out. So Labour does need, I think, and this is its task ahead, is whilst trying to keep its electoral coalition together, which is divided over the European Union, to have a clear, compelling, coherent alternative on all of those issues and try and shift the debate a bit so we're not just talking about the European Union for the next 50 years at this rate. There are other things going on in our country that need to be addressed.
It doesn't always seem like it. Owen, Sonia, Tom, thanks all.